So Pete Thamel tweeted this out a little bit earlier today, saying the commissioners did vote today to move up the winter signing day per ESPN source. That day will now come in early December before the portal opens. So early signing period originally kind of slated toward the back end, final week or third week in December. Now it looks like it's going to be up to early December, which does have an immediate impact on the college football offseason. Before the portal now, these kids can start to sign. What do you think, just before we get into what it does to the coaching cycle, because I think that's almost a bigger impact, but now being able to kind of see your class of 2024 start to take shape before the transfer portal even really opens?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing is it's just everything's not going on at one time.
Yeah.
Like the portal isn't like the coaches aren't being flooded with portal and signing day things. Like you can kind of do one thing at one time. I mean, like they're still going to intersect, obviously, but recruiting's recruiting. Recruiting is different than recruiting somebody in the portal is way different than recruiting a high school athlete, because you're going to all of these visits. You know, you're at a high school recruit's home, and you're getting texts from the Bo Nixes of the world who are transferring from big schools in the SEC trying to come play in the Pac, and you're like, I don't know, give me a second, Bo. I'm at a person's home.
Yeah,
it's like I think it's something obviously needs to be done, but I don't know. I mean, we'll see how much it impacts it.
I think this certainly does have an immediate impact on programs like Arizona State as it stands right now, teams that are trying to build. You look at what Kenny has tried to do already from the transfer portal in terms of getting younger guys as opposed to maybe some experienced vets that only have like a year left. Mm-hmm. For Kenny, being able to kind of see how the class of 2024, or I guess class of 2025 moving forward, like trying to see how that plays out now and then after the fact of being able to get in the portal, I think goes a long way in terms of shoring up certain spots on your roster. Now you look at programs that like in Alabama or Georgia or Michigan that are already kind of set in their ways. They don't necessarily, like, because of the portal, because of NIL and early signing period, it doesn't necessarily impact what they do to their roster in general because the programs are already set. Like, I don't think this necessarily has a giant impact on them, but certainly for programs that are up and coming or building, like being able to have your positions of need, like kind of understand them before you get to portal season, I think is huge. But I don't think just early signing period getting moved up impacts college football in general that much when you're talking about adding players. Yeah. But the coaching cycle part of it, I think, is really crazy because you think about teams, how quickly now they'll move off of a coach. You got early signing period maybe a week after somebody fires a coach.
Now the signing period is the weekend of the championship games, like the conference championship games. So a lot of that, I mean, that's a lot of the time when coaches are getting fired, and then immediately that's what it is.
Yeah.
It is pretty crazy. Another thing before we get right into the coaches is, like, from a high school player's perspective, I think it's better for them because now their spot isn't going to be taken up by somebody from the portal.
Yeah.
Like a fifth-year transfer isn't going to take somebody's spot at a school they've always wanted to go to. Like, that scholarship is now theirs.
Yeah.
For sure. And then the transfers can fill out the spot, which is how it always should have been. It should never have been like, okay, now we need a tackle in the portal and we need this, so let's go try to find them at the last minute in high school. It should be, we got to go find somebody at the last minute, you know, in the portal, which is already what they were doing. Yeah. But now they can't take a spot if you sign early signing period.
Yeah. It's not simultaneous the way that it was, which I think is huge. And I think you bring up the perspective of the high school players. I mean, the perspective of the transfer portal players too, I think is valid because now you have an understanding of what that position group looks like as you're in the portal. You get a call from somebody, you see that they've already signed, I don't know, 2-3 linebackers in their class of whatever, and you play that position. Maybe it is time to look at a different school. So I think that is certainly a valid perspective in all of this. It does change it. It is going to be a little bit weird to have early signing period that early on. National Signing Day in and of itself sounds like it is going to stay put. There is talk of a third signing day, which we'll discuss a little bit later, which is crazy to me that we need 3 of these. But getting back to the coaches in this entire like discussion, do you think you'll start to see teams move off of coaches earlier in the season? Do you think that has any sort of impact? Because we're talking about the future of these programs now.
I mean, I think it will now factor in a little bit more. It's 3 weeks earlier, 2 weeks?
It's about 2.5 weeks earlier.
So that does make a big difference. I mean, the obvious example is Jimbo Fisher getting fired on November 12th of last year, and Mike Elko being hired on the 27th. Like if that would have happened this year, dude's got what, 2 days?
Yeah,
to figure it out. So that makes a huge difference. So yeah, I think it's going to be in their mind. I don't think you're going to see coaches fired earlier because of that, but it's definitely going to be a factor. It's definitely going to be a contributing factor because, as you said, it's the future of these programs. It's not just this year or the year they're looking at. So
it's weird because early signing period, you've seen the growth of it over the last few years. How it's become
now it's become a holiday.
It's more relevant than national signing days. It's a bigger deal.
Yeah.
It's everything. So the fact that there could be a program that opts to fire their coach or move on from their coach at the tail end of a season, right? You're talking about the last week of November. Let's say early signing period is like, I don't know, December 7th. Now you're talking about realistically, what, 8 days, 9 days to put together or try and have those conversations with kids that are already committed to your program. And like you talk about the pressure on the coaches, like it intensifies the pressure on the administration and the athletic department now just as much, right? Because yes, the coach, when they get in there, is going to have to solve their problems. But as an athletic director, you need to fill that spot now.
Yeah.
Like you can't really dance around and wait to snag the coach of the future because you're missing out. And how often now do we see with NIL and the transfer portal, like all it takes really is one call from the right school and these kids can be gone, right? Especially when you get like, now that we're talking about the programs in general, like, when a team moves off of their coach, the transfer portal opens for 30 days. I'm curious to see now that, like, when that occurs, is the portal going to open earlier? Like, does the portal open earlier when a coaching change happens? Because it's in season too, right? Like, if a coach leaves or if there's a coaching change, the transfer portal technically opens for 30 days.
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly what would happen, but I also just don't think it matters because we've seen players just step away from the team. They don't have to. They don't have to enter the portal. Like, they're still going to get illegally contacted. Like
the Markham brothers when they were here.
Didn't that happen when Herm got fired though?
Yeah, Herm got fired. They stepped away.
Yeah, I'm saying, like, even if a coach doesn't get fired, they can still just step away.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It's college football's so. Like,
how do you feel about the fact, like, obviously we'll talk about some of these changes, but like the fact that there are now discussions to have 3 separate signing days all around the year, like, are we talking more about this impacting colleges and kids, or are we talking more about, a bottom line here with the NCAA trying to get people talking about college football throughout the year?
I don't think that's more of the case. I think it's more for the former. I think it's more for the kids and the recruits. I think we're also just going to see a shit ton of change in the next year with players unionizing. Dartmouth just did officially, like, their basketball team. Like, there's going to be a ton of change in the NIL landscape, and I don't know if it's going to get quote unquote under control. And I don't know if it needs to get under control. But something needs to change because it's getting a little bit just confusing for the average fan and especially for the players. Like,
it really is the Wild West. Donald saying that in the chat. Like, it not just like early signing period, but like all of college football right now over the last 2 years feels like the Wild West with transfer portal rules changing literally what feels like month to month. With some guys being able to transfer whenever they want, eligibility rules, whatever. Now you're talking about multiple signing days when originally, when this whole thing first started, it was just National Signing Day. Mm-hmm. Now it's not. Why are we still calling it National Signing Day when there's 3 of them?
Yeah.
Like, there's that. There's NIL. There's so much changing conference realignment. Like, I feel like there genuinely does need to be a discussion about how this kind of gets sorted out. And I don't know if there's a right way to do it as it stands right now because things are still changing.
Yeah.
But like, it genuinely does feel, like you said, for the average fan, seeing everything that kind of happens, I feel like is almost a turnoff to college sports and college football going on right now.
Yeah, I mean, adding another signing day, if you add, when we'll get to the third signing day in a little bit, but if you add to, like, why wouldn't you just not have signing days and just make it the signing period of whenever?
Yeah.
Because an interesting thing now is, like, signing days, it was important for signing days so you could lock in a player and that be that. But now you lock in a player and they're still getting texts from NC State saying, we'll give you $20,000. We'll give you, and then down the road, Virginia, and I'm talking basketball now, Virginia is like wanting to get their next Kyle Guy, and they want to pay him $100K. And so the NLI that he just signed is ripped up, and it means nothing, because once you get a player's name on the dotted line for their letter of intent, you can't just leave them be anymore.
Yeah.
You have to be like, hey, man, I just want to make sure you're still going to come to school, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's not – what is that? That sucks that has to be like that. But it's the reality of it, because, you're not in a committed relationship yet. You're still – you just got done with your first date, and you got to worry that they're going to go find somebody better, and better just means more money now.
Yeah.
And it kind of means that in real life too. But, like, you have to keep these players interested, whether that be just because they aren't 100% sure, they thought they made the decision too quick, or, their parents or another coach are telling them that they might have made that decision too quick. Like, the signing period doesn't really mean much now.
No, it doesn't. And it hasn't meant, I think, anything over the last few years, because so much of the classes are filled out already on early signing day. And you talk about the other aspect of this in terms of the transfer portal and everything that kind of comes with that. Like, it's not just about getting kids from the transfer portal to your school. It's not just about getting high schoolers to commit to your school. Like, kids are leaving regardless. Like, you have to re-recruit your talent that's already on the roster if you want to throw out a roster. Like, being a college football coach now is extremely difficult, and I don't know if having early signing period get moved up multiple weeks, like, if it helps that position or if it hurts it. I know for a fact, though, it kind of makes everything more complicated.